Hello viewers, welcome back to our series of lectures on NMR spectroscopy. In today's session, we will take up interpretation of NMR spectra. This basically is an extension of what we did in the previous session. The session is planned as follows. Just to begin with, we will try to review what we done so far in the previous sessions. Thereafter, we will recall the structure spectral correlations that we established in the previous session. Having done that, we will outline a strategy for the interpretation of NMR spectra, and then thereafter we will come to the interpretation of NMR spectra with the help of some examples. We will take a number of examples and try to see that how do we decipher the structure of the molecule on the basis of the NMR spectra. And then towards the end, we will sum up what we do in today's session. Now, let us make a beginning by briefly recalling what we have done so far. What we have done so far is we started by explaining NMR as a phenomenon and then described the methods to record the spectra. We talked about FT-NMR and CW-NMR and things like that. Thereafter, we outlined the characteristics of NMR spectrum and explained the basis and the factors affecting them. Then thereafter, in the previous session, we highlighted the structure spectrum correlations. So, we will continue from here and we will quickly recall the structure spectral correlations what we established in the previous session, and you will recall that any hydrogen atom attached to an electronegative atom is observed at low field. We showed with the help of a spectrum of methanol molecule, we saw that this proton here is coming low field because of its linkage to the oxygen atom. Thereafter, we typically share with you that ethyl group gives a typical pattern of a triplet for 3 protons and a quadret for 2 protons. Then another observation we had was that any molecule with unsaturation will show an isotropic effect, and as a consequence, so this in case of ethylene, the signal comes around 5.2 ppm, which is highly downfield. That is the effect of the anisotropy of unsaturation here. Then another correlation we had was, say, for isopropyl group. Isopropyl group is very typical, that this gives us a 6 proton doublet and a 1 proton septet, a 7-line spectrum here. That is typical of an isopropyl group. This is a very familiar structure here. Another correlation we established was with this molecule, where we showed that the tertiary butyl group gives a 9 proton singlet. It is a very typical signal for that. A 9 proton singlet is typical of tertiary butyl group, and also we showed that an O methyl group comes around 3.2 ppm or so. Another thing we showed was that in case of aromatic molecules, the aromatic molecules sustain some kind of a ring current, and as a consequence, the signals are observed highly downfield between about 7 to 8 ppm. And then aldehydes typically show the protons in the range of 9 to 10 ppm, and similarly the acids, acidic protons, the carboxylic acid protons are observed beyond 10 ppm, say 10.2 to around 12 plus and so on and so forth. So, they are the typical things which we established in the previous session. Having recalled these correlations, now let us try to kind of devise a strategy to use all this information to find out the structure of a molecule from its NMR spectrum. The strategy can be put as follows, that is, the very first step is to calculate the hydrogen deficiency index HDI for a molecule using the following expression here. That means, say if I want to find out hydrogen deficiency index for say CXHY, essentially it is given by the following formula, 2x plus 2 minus y. This basically, if the molecule is saturated hydrocarbon, I expect 2n plus 2, that is the number of hydrogen I expect, and suppose they happen to be y, so subtract that from there, divide by 2. So, this basically is a measure of the unsaturation or the presence of rings in the molecules. This is a very useful parameter, and while calculating HDI, we have to keep the following things in mind, that is, if the molecular formula has an oxygen or sulfur, we do not consider that because they do not contribute to HDI, and then halogens behave as hydrogens. So, any halogen in the molecule, we can treat it as one hydrogen there and then work out what is HDI. And in case the molecule happens to have a nitrogen atom, then we put it as a CH, that means a nitrogen is taken to be equivalent to a CH there. So, with these 3 common parameters over there, we try to work out HDI for the given molecule, and that actually, as I mentioned earlier, indicates about the unsaturation or the rings in the molecules there. We will use this as we proceed. The second step is, that is, we match the integration peak areas with the number of protons in the molecular formula. What basically we do is, we will try to see that from the spectrum what are the integration pattern there, we will try to see what is the relative ratio of the number of protons, then try to relate that with the total number of protons in the molecular formula and try to find out a given signal is for how many protons. So, that is the information, that means it gives the information about the number of protons responsible for a given signal in the spectrum there. That is the second step we do. Thereafter, the third step is to use the splitting pattern, that is spin-spin coupling, to find out for each signal how many neighboring protons are there. We know that as a first order spectra, n plus 1 rule prevails, that is, any signal is split into n plus 1 lines depending on if there are n equivalent protons in the neighborhood over there. So, this basically helps in identifying the possible molecular fragments. You recall that when we have been talking about ethyl group repeatedly. So, ethyl group is a typical example wherein we use spin-spin coupling or spin-spin splitting as a pattern recognition way of doing things there. The next step is that we look for characteristic patterns. I highlighted so many of them there. Two of them are given again over here, that is for ethyl group and for isopropyl group there. They are typical patterns to look forward to, and more than that we have talked about that earlier. Another thing we have to make use of is, this is very important, this step is very crucial, that is, from the spectrum we will try to identify possible types of protons. We have seen how many types of protons are there, total number of protons, 3 types, 4 types, then also we have seen how many neighbors are there, that is fine. But now we want to find out, that is, what is the nature of the protons we are talking about. A given signal is whether it is an O-methyl, or it is an aromatic proton, or it is an aliphatic proton, and so on and so forth. For that we make use of the following guide, which is kind of worked out on the basis of what we learnt in the previous session there. The guide goes as follows, that is, this is my typical range of NMR spectrum, say from 0 to 10 ppm is the most often used range, and sometimes we get signals beyond 10, say up to about 12 ppm or so. Now, typically a signal in the range of say around 0 to 2 ppm, that is for saturated hydrocarbons, say RCH2 or R2CH2 or R2CH or R3CH. So, all these protons are observed typically in the range of 0 to 2 ppm, and then this range around 2 to 3, say around 1.8 to about 3.2 or so, is for the protons which are say ARCH2. That means, we have talked about this in the previous session extensively, that is, any methylene group, methylene attached directly to an aromatic part here, will go downfield. It will go from, typically expectation is around say around 1 ppm. Because of the aromatic part here, it goes downfield to 2 to 3 range or so, or maybe NCH2 or SCH2, or we have got a carbonyl group in the neighborhood, that also will make it go downfield because of the anisotropic effect there. So, this range is meant for the following kind of protons there. Going further, typically any proton attached to a carbon atom which is linked directly to an electronegative atom like oxygen or a halogen will come somewhere in the range of 3 to 5 ppm. So, they are the typical broad ranges we have to look forward to. Another one is, that is, this is about say around 5.2 to about 5 to 7 or 5.2 to about 7 or so. This is typically our ethylene kind of proton, that means unsaturated protons over there. Then around benzene, that 7 to 8 is typical of aromatic protons there. Then 9 to 10 is typical of aldehydes, beyond 10 is typical of carboxylic acid. So, these ranges you have to keep in mind, because you see where the signal is located, so that will give an indication about what kind of protons may be causing this particular signal. Similarly, this OH and NH, that hydroxy and NH protons, they come in the broad range of about say 0 to about 5 ppm, and sometimes they happen to be broad, as we showed in the one of the spectrums in the previous session there. So, this is a very important guideline to kind of see, to identify the nature of the protons which are causing a given signal to be there. This is a useful step. Having done that, what we do is we account for all the protons in the molecule. That means, we will see that on the basis of all these steps 1, 2, 3, 4, we will try to see what are the structural elements we identified. Maybe there's a O-methyl there, or maybe an aromatic protons are there. So, having done that, we put them all together, we list them all, and then see that when you add them all these fragments, do they add up to give me the molecular formula or not. If not, we will try to see what is that unaccounted component over there. They will try to work out that. So, having done that, the last step would be to assemble the structure. That means all the fragments we identified, maybe there is an ethyl group there, there is a benzene ring there, or maybe there is an O-methyl. So, if that is all there, then how are they linked together? We try to logically link them together and try to see what kind of structure I get. That is my tentative structure on the basis of the spectrum I have got. Having obtained the tentative structure, what do we do is, then we try to see whether this tentative structure, does it correspond to the spectrum. So, that is the last step we do there. We revisit the spectrum and see that this correlates with the structure I have tried to kind of propose for the molecule. So, with that we come to a conclusion that a given NMR spectrum can be used to work out the structure in the following way. So, that is the kind of strategy we can make use of. We may not be using all the steps of this, but this is a typical way of doing things. So, as a person who is starting to learn about using NMR spectrum, this probably is a good way to go stepwise and learn about all these things. We will use some of these things as we take up some now take up some examples to use this strategy and try to see that how do I work out the structure of a given molecule on the basis of the spectrum I get there. Let us take some of the examples there. The first one happens to be a very simple molecule. We will start from a very simple molecule, go on to a little more complicated ones later on. Now, this molecule, we have given a spectrum here and we have given the molecular formula. So, we have to work out what is the structure of this molecule there. The formula happens to be C2H5Br. The first step is that we work out what is HDI. So, in this case, we see that it is C2H5Br. We know that the halogens act as hydrogens. So, we just compute the HDI for the molecular formula as C2H6. When we do that, we find that C2H6 is typical of saturated hydrocarbon 2n plus 2. So, that fixes over there. So, there is no unsaturation there. So, one thing is very clear, for this molecule there cannot be any unsaturation in that. That is the importance of HDI. Okay, that is my step 1. The next step is, let us look at the integration ratio. So, there are two signals there, this one here having integration of about 2.9 units and this signal is for about 2.1 units. Now, if you look at the integration ratio, if I just work out the simple possible ratio between the two, that is about 2:3. They are not exactly 2:3, but the simple ratio happens to be 2:3, which is fine. Now, 2 plus 3 gives me 5 and we know that there are 5 protons in the molecular structure, molecular formula over there. So, essentially that this signal happens to be because of as a consequence of 2 protons, this is because of 3 protons over there. So, we have identified that how many protons are causing a given kind of signal there. So, this is 2 proton, this is a 3 proton signal. Okay. So, another thing we should look forward to is any splitting pattern we see. We see a very beautiful splitting pattern here. This is a triplet here and we got a quartet here, and triplet for 3 protons, a quartet for 2 protons is glaringly typical of an ethyl group there. So, we are very sure that this is an ethyl group there. So, typical pattern happens to be ethyl group and the structure becomes very obvious that it happens to be ethyl bromide. But let us look at 2 more parameters here, 2 more points to be noted here, that is this 2 proton quartet is at about 3.4 ppm. This suggests for 3 neighboring protons, because since it is a quartet, so we expect there are 3 protons there in the neighborhood, and also since it is coming at 3.4 ppm, which is reasonably downfield, that means these protons are linked with an electronegative atom there, and since it is a 2 proton signal, so this particular the fragment which is causing this signal there at 3.4 ppm is something like this. CH2Br is the fragment which is caused, because CH2, these are 2 protons which are giving signal, these protons are linked to a carbon attached to a bromine atom which is electronegative, and of course, there are some kind of 3 neighbors in the neighborhood over there which are causing it to be a quartet structure there. Second signal at 1.8 ppm, this suggests that 2 things, that is firstly there are 2 neighbors, it is a triplet, so there are 2 neighbors there, which is fine, and also this is linked to a carbon atom which is attached to a electronegative atom, because typically if we look at only methyl group, methyl typically comes around say about 0.9 to 1.2 ppm. It is coming at 1.8 ppm. That means it is attached to a carbon atom which is attached to another carbon atom having a some kind of a electronegative atom there. So, we got a CH3 group which is attached to something which is causing this to go downfield there. So, putting the two things together, what you find is that this fragment and this fragment put together, essentially the structure comes out to be CH3 CH2 Br, and that is the molecule we are dealing with. We are dealing with 1-bromoethane or ethyl bromide as you used to call it as. Okay. So, that is one very simple example we have taken. Let us take another example, say of C3H7Br. Now, if you look at C3H7Br, again we go the same way. This is a spectrum here. Again, I have taken a very simple molecule and there are two signals there. This is here having integration ratio 1.1 and this is about 6.5. And this happens to be a doublet, this happens to be a multiplet about 6 to 7 lines over there. Now, if I look at, we start systematically and look at the HDI. HDI for this will again C3H7, since Br add to this one, this becomes C3H8, again no unsaturation there. So, there is no double bond or any ring in the molecule. One conclusion we can straight away draw. Next step is look at the integration ratio. This comes out to be 1.1 to 6.5. Simplify that, it comes to about 1 to 6. 1 to 6 is the ratio here, and 1 plus 6 happens to be 7, and there are 7 protons in the molecule structure there, a molecular formula over there. That means each signal, say 1 unit is corresponding to 1 proton. So, that means this is a 1 proton signal there and this is a 6 proton signal there. Going further, the splitting pattern we just mentioned earlier, it is a doublet and septet over there, and the typical pattern happens to be that of isopropyl group, which I learnt in the previous session there. So, with this information, two more things we will take note of here, that is the location of these two signals over there. Okay, it is fine, it is an isopropyl group, but what kind of isopropyl group? Where does the bromine atom go? Let us look at that. So, isopropyl group is this fragment we have identified on the basis of the typical pattern we are just observing in the spectrum here. Now, this 1 proton septet is coming at 4.2 ppm, which is highly downfield, which suggests that firstly, since it is septet, there are 6 neighbors, and also it is linked with a electronegative atom because it is coming highly downfield. That means it is attached directly to an atom which is electronegative. So, essentially I am dealing with this proton here which is linked to 6 equivalent neighbors there, that means a dimethyl group there, and it is attached to a bromine atom which is electronegative. So, this is the fragment which is causing this signal to come at 4.2 ppm. This 4.2 ppm is because of this proton here. Second thing is the doublet at 1.7 ppm. This again, as in the previous case, we see that this is doublet telling me that there is only one neighbor here. So, essentially I am looking at these 6 protons here. Okay. So, and there is only one neighbor here, and this neighbor is such that it is attached to a carbon atom attached to a electronegative atom there. That is why this is coming at 1.7 ppm. Otherwise, methyl groups are expected to be at around 0.8 to 1 ppm. So, with these two information put together, we can work out a structure to be, it is 2-bromopropane. That means, we have a bromine atom over there, because bromine could be here also. If it is here, the spectrum will be very different there. We will come to that as well. Let us come to the next spectrum, that is again the molecular formula happens to be C3H7Br, but now what you find is that the spectrum is very different. In the previous case, we had only 2 signals, one for 1 proton and one for 6 protons. Now, we got 3 signals there, and they happen to have, it is a triplet, it is a sextet, it is a triplet again. Let us go systematically. Again we work out HDI, that is hydrogen deficiency index happens to be 0. So, there is no unsaturation, okay, fine. So, there is no double bond, there is no ring. Next step is look at the integration ratio. Integration ratio is 2 is to 1.9 is to 2.9. Simplify that, it gives me 2 is to 2 is to 3. Again they add up to give me 7. That means this is for the 2 protons, so is this one again for 2 protons, this is for 3 protons there. Okay. So, we have seen that these signals are coming because of the following number of protons over there. Let us go further and see what is the kind of splitting pattern we have. The splitting pattern is we got a triplet, another a sextet here and a triplet here. what does it mean? Let us go a little deep into that. So, we just keep this picture in mind that there are 3 signals, this is around 1 ppm, this is around 1.9 ppm, this is around 3.5 ppm. Let us look at these. And there is no typical pattern which comes, there is no isopropyl group, there is no ethyl group, there is no tertiary butyl, and these typical patterns are not there. So, how do we decipher the structure now? Let us look at this. The most downfield signal is at 3.4 ppm. This suggests that, because since it is a triplet, so there are 2 neighbors there firstly, and secondly, since it is coming at downfield over here, it must be attached to a electronegative atom, and the expected fragment will be, that means we are looking at this proton here. This proton which has got 2 neighbors here, so it is coming as a triplet, and this is attached to a bromine atom, that is why it is coming at 3.4 ppm. That is one observation. Another signal we have is at 1.1 ppm, it is a 3 proton triplet. What does it mean? This means that since it is a triplet, so there are 2 neighbors for that. And secondly, it is coming at 1.1 ppm, that is a typical position for a methyl group. So, the fragment I can devise from this information is that it is something like this, CH3, CH2, and I am looking at these 3 protons there, this methyl group there having 2 neighbors here. The third bit of information we have is, we got a 2 proton sextet at about 1.8 ppm. What does this indicate? This indicate, since it is a sextet, means it is a 6 line spectrum. Since it is a 6 line spectrum, this tells me that these protons are having 5 equivalent neighbors there. There are 5 neighbors over there. That is one information. And secondly, since it is coming at about 1.8 ppm, that means these protons are attached to a carbon atom which is attached to an electronegative atom there, and it could be something like this. So, all this information put together, I can work out a structure to be something like this, wherein it is CH3, CH2, CH2, Br. So, these are the 2 protons here which will have 3 neighbors in this side and 2 on this side. So, 3 plus 2 5, and this gives me a 6 line spectrum over there. So, that is the kind of spectrum I get there, and these protons are coming at 1.8 ppm because they are attached to a carbon atom attached to a bromine atom there. So, the structure comes out to be 1 bromopropane. So, CH3, CH2, CH2, Br. So, you see that this one and the previous example, both of them have got the same molecular formula, but they are giving me different structures. The structure we have deciphered to be different on the basis of the spectrum which happens to be different there. And this gives us one indication that we can use NMR even to differentiate between or distinguish between isomers there. This is my 1 bromopropane, the spectrum is there, this is for 2 bromopropane. So, you find that we can just work out that if I have got a molecule, I want to identify whether it is 1 bromopropane or 2 bromopropane, I just look at the NMR spectrum. If I get only 2 signals there, it is 2 bromopropane. If it happens to be 3 signals over there like this, it happens to be 1 bromopropane. So, this is one of the applications of NMR spectrum, that is, we can work out, distinguish between isomers or very closely related molecules can be distinguished on the basis of NMR spectrum, and thus we try to work out how many signals to expect and where to expect them. Okay, let us continue. Let us take up another example. Now, this example is slightly more involved now. We are gradually building up the complexity of the molecules. This is C9H10O. Now, here what you are seeing is there is 1, 2, 3, 4. So, on the face of it, there are about 4 different types of protons we have in the molecule. Let us go further, let us go systematically and look at the HDI. HDI, it is C9H10, oxygen is not to be considered. So, for this 9 2s are 18 plus 2 20, I expect it to be 20 hydrogens to be there, but there are only 10. That means, there is short of 10 hydrogens, means 10 by 2 happens to be 5. That means, the HDI for this molecule with this molecular formula happens to be 5. That means, I expect 5 double bonds or a combination of double bonds and a ring. Maybe there is 1 ring, or there are 2 rings and 3 double bonds there, or maybe there is 1 double bond, and so on and so forth. There are different combinations we can think of. But the bottom line is that for this molecule, the HDI happens to be 5. Okay. Now, let us go further and look at the integration ratio. The integration ratio, the integration values here are 5.2, 26.1, 10.1 and 10.5. If I just simplify that, it comes out to be 1:5:2:2. And incidentally, again, if I just add them together, so 1 is plus 5 is 6 plus 2 8 plus 2 is 10. So, they are this adds to 10 and there are 10 protons here. So, we can see that this is for 1 proton, this signal is for 5 protons, this is for 2 protons each over there. So, another information or inference what we can draw from here is that there are 4 different types of protons, and these numbers here 1, 5, 2, 2 actually indicate the actual proton ratio as it adds up to 10, as I just mentioned here. Okay. Now, let us try to analyze these 4 signals here and see what kind of information can we gather about the structure of the molecule here. Okay. Now, the most glaring one, the obvious one to look forward to is that is we have got a 5 aromatic protons there, because there is a 5 proton signal at about 7.25 ppm, which is very obvious indication that I am dealing with some kind of a monosubstituted benzene, because since there are 5 protons over there. So, we got this as a fragment which comes as a consequence of this particular signal in the spectrum there. Second observation we have is we have got a singlet around 9.8 ppm. This again is very typical. You will recall that we know that any signal between 9 to 10 ppm typically is because of an aldehyde. So, there is one fragment like CHO in the molecule. So, one is my kind of monosubstituted benzene or phenyl ring there. Second happens to be an aldehyde. Let us go further. What you find is that there are 2 triplets or 2 protons each, say around about 1 ppm around that. Now, if I look at these 2 methylene groups there, essentially since there are 2 triplets, it indicates that both of them, and they happen to be for 2 protons each. So, essentially they indicate that we are dealing with 2 methylene groups over there which are in the neighborhood of each other. So, this will give me a triplet because of these 2 protons, this will give me a triplet because of these 2 protons over there, and there is something more fragments over there. Okay. So, there are 3 fragments I have identified on the basis of the spectra I have seen there. Now, if I just try to add this fragment there, this is first fragment is C6H5, then CHO, then C2H4, there are 2 methylene groups there. If I add them all together, this gives me C9H10O. It is same as my molecular formula. That means, on the basis of NMR spectrum, I have been able to identify all the possible fragments in the molecule there. Then the next step happens to be, how do I get the structure of the molecule? So, we have to combine all these fragments. When I combine that, the most obvious combination will be something like this. That means, we have got a benzene ring over there of phenyl group, and these are 2 methylenes there, and then there is an aldehyde there. There is no other way they can combine. So, that is the only possibility we have, and we find that this agrees with my NMR spectrum I observed for this particular molecule. And there are 2 things which we have to make note of here is that these methylene groups are observed low field, lower than what is normally expected, and the reason for that is, say for this methylene group here, this is coming downfield because of the fact that this is attached to a aldehyde group, there is a carbonyl group there. Because of the anisotropy of carbonyl, this is coming downfield there. And second factor is that this is reasonably close to a benzene ring there, which again will cause an isotropic effect on that and make it go downfield there. So, for this methylene group here, so this is a major factor there, this is a minor factor there. For this methylene here, which is directly linked to a benzene ring here, so this is the predominant factor which is making it go downfield, and this also plays a role in making this go downfield. So, both of them are observed downfield, but the actual position will depend on what is the relative magnitude of the effect of carbonyl group and that of the benzene ring over there. Now, let us sum up what we have done. What we have done is we reviewed the contents of previous session, and then thereafter we recalled very important things what we did in the previous session, that is how do we relate structure of the molecules and their spectrum. We took molecules of known structures and the spectrum, then we found some kind of relationship between them, and those relationships we have made use of today in trying to work out a strategy for interpreting NMR spectra, and that strategy we used with the help of certain examples to interpret the NMR spectra of simple molecules and try to work out the structure of those molecules. We have taken 4 typical examples there. We started by a very simple molecule, we tried to go a little more in complication over there, and with this I am sure that you are now some kind of acquainted with how to look at NMR spectrum what kind of information, how do we go about trying to translate the NMR spectrum into the structure of the molecule there. We will continue with the same exercise. We will go into slightly more complicated molecules and try to see that how do we decipher. That means basically it will be some kind of a practicing exercise over there that we will take up in the next session. We will talk about more molecules and we will try to see that how do we use this strategy which we have formulated today to work out the spectra, we use the NMR spectrum to work out the structure of the molecules they refer to. Thank you.